In the ashen aftermath of World War II in Europe, cities lay gutted and millions were displaced, and Allied leaders moved to confront the legal and moral chaos. On August 8, 1945, the London Charter established the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg to try leaders for crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The United States appointed Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson as chief prosecutor, and 22 major Nazi figures were indicted, including Hermann Goering, Rudolf Hess, and Joachim von Ribbentrop. At the heart of it was a single devastating question: could individuals be held criminally responsible for state-sponsored atrocities that reshaped the world? On November 21, 1945, in the Palace of Justice at Nuremberg, Robert H. Jackson delivered a forceful opening that framed the proceedings as both a legal adjudication and a moral reckoning. He announced that the defendants would be judged for crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Defense teams immediately attacked the court's jurisdiction and argued against retroactive punishment, invoking nullum crimen sine lege and the just following orders defense. The prosecution answered with a flood of documentary evidence: captured German records bearing the signatures of Hermann Goering and Joachim von Ribbentrop, the Wannsee Conference minutes of January 20, 1942, Einsatzgruppen reports, and Allied liberation films from Buchenwald and Dachau. Witness lists promised survivor testimony, camp liberators, and German civil servants to trace a chain of command. Together, the documents and witnesses hardened the trial's legal and narrative stakes and pushed the case forward. In the weeks that followed, Jackson and his team produced a steady stream of captured German records: Reichsbahn transportation manifests, SS and Gestapo orders, the Wannsee Conference minutes of January 20, 1942, and Einsatzgruppen reports that mapped mass murder across Eastern Europe. Liberation films from Buchenwald, Dachau, and Auschwitz made abstract atrocity starkly visible, while survivors and camp liberators gave testimony that tied signatures and documents to the slaughter they had witnessed. The prosecution used logistics rail timetables and correspondence from the Reich Foreign Office to trace bureaucratic chains of command to defendants such as Goering and von Ribbentrop. At the same time, the Allied delegations, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and France, disagreed over legal definitions, jurisdiction, and sentencing policy, which forced tactical compromises about what evidence could be admitted and how charges were framed. The flood of documents and films hardened the case of guilt, even as those procedural fights foreshadowed the intense closing arguments and the judge's eventual verdicts. At Nuremberg's Palace of Justice, the trial hardened into relentless interrogation as U.S. Chief Prosecutor Robert H. Jackson pressed defendants to account for orders, policy decisions, and industrial collaboration. Hermann Goering, once Hitler's designated successor, answered with bluster and polished rhetoric even as Luftwaffe requisitions and four-year plan directives traced back to his signature, tightening the net of evidence. Joachim von Ribbentrop confronted foreign ministry cables and diplomatic dispatches that undermined his alibis. Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments, acknowledged the regime's reliance on forced labor in armaments production and offered a limited admission of moral responsibility while disputing direct knowledge of extermination policy. Survivor and liberator testimony, transportation manifests, SS labor allocations, Wannsee Conference minutes, Einsatzgruppen reports, and liberation films turned evasive testimony into clear evidence of guilt. By spring 2046, the accumulated factual record made exoneration untenable. On October 1, 1946, at the Palace of Justice in Nuremberg, the International Military Tribunal read its verdicts. 12 defendants were condemned to death, including Joachim von Ribbentrop, Wilhelm Keitel, Alfred Jodl, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, and Hermann Goering. Goering received a death sentence but killed himself on October 15, 1946. Rudolf Hess was sentenced to life. Albert Speer received 20 years. Hjalmar Schacht, Franz von Papen, and Hans Fritzsche were acquitted. Others drew prison terms ranging from 15 years to life. The tribunal rejected a blanket just following orders defense and survivors wept as the verdicts delivered a grim legal reckoning. After the October verdicts, Nuremberg set lasting precedents. It established individual criminal responsibility, codified crimes against humanity, and limited ex post facto objections. Those principles underpinned the 1948 Genocide Convention, the ad hoc tribunals for Yugoslavia and Rwanda, and later the International Criminal Court. At the same time, Nuremberg drew accusations of victor's justice, leaving the trials both a foundational milestone in international law and a sharp moral touchstone. How should humanity respond to mass atrocity?